So I'm happy again to speak about whatever you would like me to speak about.
I do have a couple of, not questions really, because one, you have mentioned other times, like about hatred, that pure hatred is like, comes from God. It's pure. I don't know if I said it quite right, but and you never, excuse me, and you never mentioned that this morning. The other one was, it finally hit me. Like you said, this is a time of great change. I mean, you're not the first person I've heard say that. Seems like something's going on now. But I haven't heard anybody make what's a logical inference or whatever. Oh, well, if it's a time of great change now, what was it before? What has it been? And to me, I'm thinking that that's quite relevant to some of the uncomfortable memories we might have.
Yeah, and that they're coming up.
That's, I guess, part of the time that they would be coming up, but they're there anyway, whether they were coming up. They're
Right.
having an effect anyway,
Right.
and in karma and so on.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure what the emphasis of your...
Well, then, but I connect the two when you say everything comes from God, because I say, what's making everything change? What's creating this change now? And if there's some intelligence of this, so what was it before? How come? I mean, to me, the answer becomes obvious, but you haven't talked about it at all.
Oops, I'd love to hear your obvious answer.
Well, it's obvious that some intelligence is making things happen that I don't have a clue about. I mean, I can see that it might be happening, and if essentially, what is it? I don't have the right words, but creation, all creation comes from, things that I don't have a clue about, but which I name God. It's for want of a better way. I could say spirit or whatever. Everything comes from there. And yes, I have free will, but you've talked about it before, and I've, made perfect sense. But how much free will do I actually have? I mean, I didn't have anything to do with this retreat being right now, and my daughter having her baby 2 weeks early, and my niece coming down with cancer. All that, is like, I mean, I can behave whatever is appropriately for these things, but I had nothing to do with causing him to be this way. There, I mean, I didn't ask to be born in this body. Not Richard didn't. I mean, I understand. And you can extend it back and say, oh, okay, so the soul's going and it's saying, well, the soul has limitations too. I mean, they all do, and well, so when I worked back, because you were so kind as to allow me to actually be obstreperous, and when I was irritated, and you said friction, but whatever you did, whatever that conversation did, it released a whole bunch of stuff. You might, I don't, maybe you saw it, but I didn't realize until after. Anyway, and so last night when I started thinking about torture, but anyway, but what was coming up, oh yeah, I was awake, so.
Can you condense a little? Because there are different pieces that are all in what you're sharing, and I'm wanting to have the streamlined.
So I remembered getting hung.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, so, what's going on? Oh, Monica forgave. Yeah, I wonder. And so I started going back and seeing about forgiving. That didn't work. And so I said, okay, so the personality, that slave, was confused and didn't know what was going on, but he could see. And I said, confusion, yeah. On the soul level, oh, that soul probably deserved it. I mean, it was me. I deserved it. I'd done plenty of things to merit getting hung. Okay, so karma, fine. What about the level above that? Well, here's, well, in a sense, it's like right and wrong, good and evil kind of doing a dance. Evil's kind of coming out on top, but, and I said, oh, that's fine. That's, and then I said, and who's doing the dance? What's the dance? And I said, it all comes from God. It is, in a sense, it's a divine event. I mean, these are your words I'm using, it's a divine event. God is being, source, whatever, is seeing through the eyes of the actors. And so, in a sense, it's a blessed event. The entire thing, as is what's here.
And is this what this is what you came to in your experience? Oh.
And you see how I've related, I mean, so who's making these things happen? And yeah, it's a good time for this coming out, but what about before when it happened? Other times when it happened? How's that? It's just not as simple as feeling bad. About something I might have done or whatever. That's really what I would. dancing around with.
The one word you use that I wanted to respond to is deserve. Where you're talking about that deserving,
Right.
that's not like, for me, the relationship to that word has some judgment or something in it, where in the balancing of life there's not judgment in that way.
That's right. Yes.
And in terms of the larger flows, the easiest way for me to speak about it is how the earth spins and there's light and dark
Yeah.
rotating, and it's a natural cycle. And then I think all the planets, everything is spinning around the sun, I think is how it works. They're all spinning, and then they're spinning around the sun, and then they've also realized that the whole sun and thing and everything itself is actually a spiral, and that thing is spinning through space. So
And it's all moving into a new region now.
So in terms of our minds trying to understand the concept of cycles, and that all of that, it's like these different game boards, these different levels of
Right.
of being and cycles that are happening, and and there have been lots of cycles before, and there will be more,
I
right?
think so. Okay.
So, I mean,
The it's so easy for me, or but I hear it too, to feel that I've done something wrong, that I'm lacking in some way, that I've made a mistake, and I mean, it's certainly true. I mean, I do make mistakes, of course. Not blame. I mean, the idea of blaming for the mistake, that was, way too much blame. I mean, it's one thing to take responsibility and another thing to add on all the extra.
right. Well, as I was saying earlier with the past life, all the past lives I was looking at, that for myself, is that one starts to see all actions are made out of an attempt to meet God.
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
there's an innocence in that,
Yep.
exploration.
Yes. And and Lord knows, I mean, me being mean to my little brother because he happened to be born at the wrong time and kind of, in my mind, steal my mother. How much of blame do I attach to myself, the 3-year-old, for doing this? Not very much, although it's needless to say I did it. Not very much. I was just acting in my 3-year-old innocence to get what I desperately needed.
Right.
I mean, that's just an example. I mean, how many, we all have those. There's no more words popping up. So I think it's time to end.
Let me see if any words pop up here.
Okay.
It's all a mystery to me too. And I just see what I see. And part of that has been seeing the misshapen geometries, and in a certain way they're not misshapen, they're just creative expressions of something that's pure. But in our felt sense, it feels better when it's not misshapen. And,
Yes.
and in the transforming that's happening, has that misshapen been because of our free will and our individuated ability to express and create and explore in the outward expression, and yet then in the inward call backwards in that inhale, then there starts to be a recognition of, oh, that hurts, and a surrendering, and the resolving happens, and the more refined frequencies then have more influence in our return to be a clearer reflection of that pure being that we arise out of.
Yes.
And hatred to me feels like an exploration of love in a curiosity of what's love inside out. Like the opposite of that. So
Yes.
hate doesn't feel to me like it was an original creation.
Right.
It feels like it was an exploration, and that in that self-reflection actually returns back to love, because that's what's true.
Right.
And
Yeah,
it
I like
seems
that.
to me all of our explorations that have that sense of pain or suffering have some element of an exploration to come back to wholeness.
Absolutely. I mean, I could not agree more. The worst of behaviors are truly an attempt to be good, or to in a sense it is to reach out. I mean, I don't know if the person doing it can conceive so far, but yes, to be with God.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's actually brings tears to my eyes to actually feel the pain. Which it's like make me twist my head. Doesn't take away from it being a divine event.
Mm-hmm.
That one is like,
Mm-hmm.
the mind trying to grapple with this impossible. With the impossible.
Mm-hmm. The depth of the suffering, the extremeness of the behavior, for me, brings up a deeper compassion for understanding how excruciating that is on the inside to even be able to conceive certain behaviors. And so in a certain way it seems quite far from the source.
Yeah.
But every moment is, the truth is always right there. So no matter how far one has strayed, there is the possibility of the turnaround.
Yes, at any point. Which is, again, is like a head twister.
Well, it's so, I mean, this is why I keep sharing in my work about each of us opening through our own pathways, and that's how we shift the collective. That's
Yes.
that's how we shift the game board.
From wherever we are. Yes.
And that reminds me of the manifestation question that came up. Is there more that's there? So, in certain ways, I've been speaking about manifestation throughout the whole retreat, and that the surrendering into the embodiment increases the choice capacity within the manifesting, and the surrendering in and then opening on these deeper levels also then creates more opportunity, more possibility. So upon reflection in the break around speaking about manifestation, I was realizing that I've been speaking about it throughout, but maybe not naming it as that.
Yeah, I almost didn't think it needed to be brought up because I see it running through everything that you're saying. Pretty much.
Was there another element to it that you were wanting addressed?
On a real base level, because I'm in sales, and what I sell gives me freedom, because the more things that I sell, then it allows me to have more and more freedom as far as monetarily. I take more and more time off or whatever. So I do like to learn how to manifest, which I think I'm very good at already. If there's anything that can help me, it sure doesn't hurt to learn about it, And it seems like just when, if I'm in a place in sales where if I'm just going to help the people that I'm working with, it seems like that works the best for me. Always thinking of their own, and they can feel it from me. And I seem to do, I'm one of the top people in the company from just a whole different philosophy. Like, I don't want to listen to any sales training. If they have it, I keep away from it completely, because I just want to sell from, like, I even tell people, look into my eyes, customers. And I said, I'm telling you the truth. And they'll go like this. And then I'm saying, and then they'll almost nod their head with me, So, so I kind of studied manifestation just because it can help with the freedom that, that I can have, Because I'm not really big on work all the time.
One of the things that I realized when I was younger was that I was doing the opposite of that. That I had these, well, the story was I always had literally, like almost to the penny, just enough money at the end of the month to pay for everything. And then if my car had a breakdown, at the end of the month I had exactly, almost to the penny, everything I needed, including that breakdown.
Right.
So there was this realization of, something's going on. Obviously I'm aware what I need. And so then there was an idea of that I felt comfortable manifesting what I needed. So I did an experiment of, okay, I need an extra $1,000 this month for future things, for things I don't know about. So the next month there was literally $1,000 extra. And then I thought, all right, I'm going to put $2,000 in my need category. So I was realizing places where I had issues with abundance or wealth or whatever my storylines were. And because then at the end, right then there's $2,000 at the end of that next month. So in that, my exploration was then to look for the limiting factor in myself and pull it out. And so I did that. And then I was scheduled 3 months out for sessions from that inner thing. And money wasn't then one thing or another. It was like, oh, the issues had been resolved. And so it wasn't a manifestation issue. It was a blocking issue. So, yeah, which is kind of significant in a certain way, that the universe is naturally abundant. And so there's a way in which then the personal will, for me, is not engaging. Let me just be quiet for a moment. Well, that the abundance feels like an intrinsic aspect of being, and that in opening in through that in myself and surrendering to that which is intrinsic, then there's no difference between abundance or creativity or freedom or anything. And so there's a way then in my system, there's not an emphasis on one or another. There's the authentic movement. So when it's time for me to come up with a live stream course and a name, a topic, a description, then creativity rises up and produces fruit in itself just because creativity is rising up. And abundance to me feels like, again, just these natural laws. And that in the resting in, let me just listen, I'm hearing. Well, I'm also just being shown that, again, it's different for different people, depending on what their lessons are, and that it's just another avenue, opportunity for growth. So for some people, it's an aligned movement to engage the will and start learning how to manifest more abundance in money or love or toy cars, whatever it is, you know. I'm just remembering a cat in a healing session that was wanting help. The cat had been moved by the owners. They moved, relocated, and the cat had figured out a whole routine for. He didn't like the food that he got at home, so he had this. It was really healthy food. He liked junk cat food, and had figured out this whole manifestation track where he could go to all these different houses, and he got his thing. And when they moved, he asked his owner for a session because he was having a hard time he was like, couldn't get his manifesting groove going in the new location. So, manifesting money, toy cars, cat food, whatever. Yeah, it was actually a really fun, totally fun session. But so there's a. It's like anything. It's no different than doing the work, in where we're called to show up in a particular way in the world and engage in a particular way, and it's our own mastery. So the reason this is coming in is I was starting to speak from how I relate to the abundance, which is only relative to where this system is now in relation to that, which isn't necessarily relevant for other people. It's just what happens to be true here in that moment. So, and so I don't have anything to sort of teach about that other than it would be different for each person asking. And what you're already sharing is the wisdom that you know, which is it's about coming from your heart. That's and right. Being in service and in love. And in service and love, the universe is taking care of you financially and taking care of other people in the whole exchange. So it's not about getting something from somebody, it's about giving something. Maybe you should talk to the people in the company and have you be the one who's teaching the sales classes. Maybe that's not your wish.
There you go. That's a little off there, Miles. Got to put some pressure on here, Miles. Give him a headlock here or something. But sales is a very interesting thing because it's about manifesting. I mean, if you're not in a good place or you don't have the right people come to you and it's just this big thing, but if you're really flowing and open and it's amazing how well you can do, and then the guy next to you is not doing well at all, and it's a pretty interesting thing.
You can write a book on sales, spiritual sales.
There you go. That might be good.
Yeah.
Huh. That might be the thing right there. Now that could be abundant, maybe, huh?
I think it could be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think you could write it.
One thing that I've really noticed, and this is kind of off the topic, is that all the questions that I've asked, I've almost felt like the questions have been really, when I was saying that guidance showed up in my meditation. After I asked the question, I thought, oh, that's so nothing, really. It's such a low thing, and I've been feeling, all the years of, all the books I've read and all the, time I spend in India and all the travel and all the stuff that I feel like I'm still in kindergarten in so many ways, And I feel like only now do I really feel like I'm really ready to take it beyond. And I've almost maybe held myself back because I've been enjoying looking, if that makes sense. All those places and, just traveling and looking and all the people that I've met. It's been fun, but it hasn't taken me to that place, of the awakening that I know is there. And I've only just realized it now, So that's exciting to me. Mm-hmm. And I know that I'm right now, and I feel very emotional about it, is I'm only now ready to give into it 100%, whatever it takes, you know, whether it's to walk away from something or to, you know, walk to something or to whatever it is, you know, is how I feel right now.
It's beautiful.
So.
If you looked at a kindergartner, I can't even say it, kindergartner, and looked at their year of their joy and their exploration in that classroom, would you judge that?
No, I wouldn't. And you know, 10 years, I thought I knew a lot. And now I know nothing. Hardly, you know?
I totally know that. I'm in the same boat.
And it seems like the simple things are the things that I'm seeing that are very simple are the most amazing to me right now. And I seem to understand the complex things, but it's the simple things that are really amazing me, you know? And
I'd love to hear you share some of them. Because it's true, there's such poignancy. There's all the complexity and the simplicity just, you know, hits the nail on the head.
yeah. I can't think of them right now.
Okay.
You know, but, and I was jokingly going to say it. And I've had two, all the therapy, and I've actually had two girlfriends that were therapists. And so I've had some pretty good free therapy. But I have to use the bathroom. Well, what's that all about?
How do you feel about that?
Right. And I love, what I love about you is I love that, you know, I've spent time with teachers who, they don't want to tell their story. Like, you know, they just want to be in the you know, they don't want to hear anything but about now. But I just think the story is so, it's really important to me, you know, of how we got to this point, and, you know, and I think it's very limiting to not be able to go into the past and, you know, and everything, and to do you know what I mean about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're referring to teachers that are in that focus of trying to help people wake up, and so they're in that now, like, I understand that as a way of being. I mean, it has its own use, its own place,
I
and
think so.
I'm
Also,
just something else is what's coming out of here.
yeah.
Yeah, and for me, the stories, because we're all at different places, how I navigated something a number of years ago could be totally relevant to what someone is navigating now. And so it seems to me that it's useful, and that waking up or seeing through the self is one piece. And then there's the integration, the maturing, the functioning, the application, and then it's a process that just keeps continuing and continuing. So, I mean, I hope that my stories are helpful, so I'm glad to hear, you know, that they have been.
And your energy is in the now, you know, for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's everything, you know.
Well, I'm so glad you listened to whatever impulse it was to get you here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good thing. And it was actually a woman. It was funny because I had seen that you were going to be in Sedona, and I didn't really know anything about you, and then I happened to be in Mount Shasta, and this woman said, wrote down these teachers that she thought were really good. And she said, she wrote 3 of them, and one of them was you. And I thought, well, that's no coincidence there, you know. So, yeah, I happened to be in Mount Shasta when I signed up here. Yeah.
Very fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
And yeah, let me know if a book comes out.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. One thing that did happen that I thought was interesting is right by my house, there was a woman that was doing she went around to different corporations and different groups and spoke all over the world. And she was doing this as a tithe for the Unity Church. She invited people to do this, to talk about manifestation. So I thought, oh, it's by my house, I'm just going to go over there. So there was probably 20 people in the room. And then she said, each person learn their name, and then what a person wants, say what you really in your heart want right now, and tell everybody. And I'm going to write it down. I'm going to send it to you on the computer, and I want each person to pray for everybody. And it was so amazing what happened. Everybody praying for 20 people praying for everybody. It just blew me away. Because then every week everybody would meet and talk about what's happened in what they were, and almost every person had a monstrous shift. And even my sales tripled. It was I don't even know where the money came from. It was just like crazy amounts of money came to me. And so yeah, it was really interesting.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the tradition that I come from, it's about the now, and that didn't work here, and so there's been like a recalibrating to and I don't even know, but just a different approach. But what I would really like to hear you talk about is something that totally fascinates me is the awareness, consciousness that's in animals. It's miraculous. They're these individual beings, and they're all over the place, and I don't even see them. And I mean, so the most relationship that I have with animals are pets, which I don't really see as pets. They're more like beings that they can be here or they can leave it if they want. And but I wish you would speak about your relationship with animals. I'm interested if there's a tuning.
I'm happy to respond to that. I'm more interested in the first thing you said.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
About now and how that
Okay.
didn't work here. I'm like, wow,
Okay.
what does that mean?
I guess trying to describe my experience in the moment. So, talking about tuning, when I speak just from the mind, there's a certain vibration quality. If I'm listening to what I'm saying, if other people are, that can be picked up. In trying to understand what I'm speaking about in the moment, but I don't. I wasn't able to do that the first time I spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why. But so it seemed like I needed to drop my past ways of doing those things, which right now seems a little I guess just trying to be more relaxed about doing that.
About speaking from the present without thinking? I'm just trying to understand what you're saying.
In part.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually, I'm not remembering what I spoke about the first time, so that's kind of like in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So what, I guess so I don't like talking about myself much, but my focus has been about keeping attention in the body so that there's a persistent awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about it, or my focus has been too on that instead of being me. Combining those two things together.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
I get that that you're still questioning where I'm coming from.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. Yeah. And part of the way that sharing happens here is through a transmission, so that there's a presence and a frequency, a transmission, a emanation of the truth, the experiential embodiment of the mystery that I've been speaking about the whole week. And so even though language has been happening that isn't always speaking about the sensation in this moment, but is speaking about things that have happened in the past, as bringing those forward. Even though words may do that, it's all within a fairly thick frequency of the now-ness, that embodied being. And all the words that come out are coming out of that. Without knowing what the words are before they actually come out.
And by thickness of the now, do you in part mean the awareness of the body? It's here now, and it's thicker than these words that are coming out from who knows where.
No, what I mean thick is that the frequency that's being generated, the intensity, the volume button goes up when I'm teaching. And so the thickness, it's more like there's the intensity, or a radio, if you turn the radio up, like the station gets really clear and the volume gets cranked. And so that's one of the ways that the sharing of the realizations here occurs. And someone asked me to speak on the panel at the Science and Non-duality conference, and she said she asked me to speak on it not because she had ever heard me talk about it, but because she said she felt like I was living what she wanted to have this panel be about. And so there's a way in which, even though I'll talk about things in the past or in the future, that there's an embodiment of that, of this recognition of what we all are, that exudes that realization. And when I was saying thick, that was kind of what I meant, is it's coming out in a very loud or palpable way. So I feel it as thick, like if you walk by someone who's really angry and you can feel, wow, they're super angry. It's like the intensity of the field, or that's just a little bit, so it's not as thick. So that's how I was using the word thick. And the speaking from the emptiness, it also feels like it's part of my sitting here as a demonstration of that embodiment. And, when you have two notes in a room, two tuning forks, and you hit one and then the other one goes off. So it's kind of like my amplification of this and my example of that puts out a loud frequency for the part of each of you that is that same truth, for you to start recognizing that vibration on the inside of you. And then how that comes out of you will be different than how it comes out of me because of our uniqueness. So,
just in relation to the tuning fork, and I had mentioned speaking from the mind has one frequency, and speaking from even just listening to what I'm saying, I can tell there's a change in it, but so something that's been odd to me, so I can tune into that, and I think I can tell when people are just speaking from their mind.
Mm-hmm.
But you, I have not picked up the a frequency that I guess I'm looking for of when somebody has attention in their body, because that's the tradition. So I exchange with people like this, and they're trying to keep attention in their body and speak. And I guess there's a frequency, and when that happens, that happens to me too.
Uh-huh.
And there's a tuning with everybody, but with your tuning, it's more sublime, and I don't know why.
It's so interesting. I'm just so curious. I'm like totally curious. Yeah, I don't know. Like in the teachings, it may be that part of what's happening is this whole retreat has been a focus of having light come in through the body and kind of elevate the body frequency. And so I'm curious, as I just kind of check myself, it's like I'm just curious of the difference. Like in my own experience, there's profound embodiment happening in the speaking and the being and, and all of that. So I'm wondering if it's also because of the frequency coming in. But I would think it would also support you feeling embodied in yourself. So that's why I'm kind of like curious.
Yeah, I don't know. There's an effort of, so in my tradition, I guess there's an effort of doing, which comes from I'll get the player piece, the Greg.
Mm-hmm.
But in with talking with you, that it's not the effort, there isn't an effort necessarily to be. It's just relaxing and talking and being.
Mm-hmm. For me, in that beingness, and so in the beginning, for me, after an initial awakening, there was this exploration, this curiosity. I recognized that my mind was sort of separate from the emotions, and my mind was protecting the emotions. And that the mind was engaging and strategizing to make sure things didn't happen in life that either felt like that or were going to make me feel like that in the future. And I was being with that separation. And so that experiment of putting the thumbs on the yin and yang and the meridian and surrendering them into each other, or the tesseract, I decided to do that with the mind and the heart. So I meditated, played that game, surrendered, and suddenly discovered that there was a resting in being and presence in the present moment. And that in that union, any of the emotional wounding that had happened was only going to be healed if it was actually resting in the present moment. That's where the juice was, the life force that would heal those wounds, and that the separation of the mind protecting the wounding was actually perpetuating the wounding. And so when those two then came together and surrendered, and there was a resting in embodied being, there wasn't a sense of striving or trying or efforting or anything. It was just this embodied beingness that felt good. And effort is useful sometimes. Effort's really useful sometimes, and sometimes it's not so useful. And when I was speaking about the dancing of, inviting dancing to happen, it's a dancing that's not self-conscious, that doesn't sort of think about itself moving. I'm talking about the moving that just is happening in that embodiment. So, I don't know, do you guys play with that at all in terms of dropping into the being, or is there always a state of attention that's required with the sense of embodiment, where effort is then engaged?
It's different than what think it's different than what you're thinking.
Uh-huh.
There isn't that in kind of relaxation in exchange like this. There's sacred movements, which a little like dervishes. Some of them, others are movements, and there the mind, the body, and the feelings each have their different roles, and in this form, they pretty much they do take the rightful roles, and the organism works closer to as it should, so that you can have a taste.
That sounds awesome.
It is. It is. But that's different than, I guess, more free form of movement or.
Can you meditate and open to that frequency without doing the movements? Can you open to that embodiment of what happens there while you're sitting here and have that world of yourself meet this world here?
Yes, I personally don't do that intentionally. There are times when I can tell I'm more in my mind than making it up. I guess there are impressions will come that the organism is, when I'm not in the sacred movements during the day, and like an impression may come that the body is doing its role. I'm not thinking about how to carve this piece of wood. It's the body is just carving it, and the mind is playing its proper role of looking to see what's coming up. So it's not and there's not an intention to marry those two forms.
I was only thinking of it as an experiment now, just because so much of my unfolding has happened through experiments, like sitting and meditating. What happens if the mind, and realizing, wait a minute, my heart and mind are separate. There's this protective thing going on. Well, what happens if that, And so much has happened through these experiments, and so it only makes sense if it resonates, for you. But it was because in your initial sharing of how it that resting in that now place somehow wasn't working, or wasn't somehow happening in this retreat. And if you have a practice that's strong, that's beneficial and beautiful and aligns you in a particular way, that's where then the curiosity just came from of, okay, because it somehow sounds like that is different than this. And so then that's just what comes up in me, this curiosity of like, oh, what happens if you are with both of those and have them do that thing too? Like it was just a curiosity and not not for it to become a practice of anything. It's more just, oh, I wonder what happens, you know? So it may not be relevant or interesting or, you know, useful. But it's been interesting for me hearing about the practice that you're speaking about. Is there more there that we can unfold that's useful?
No, but a question came.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you and Miles have talked about light, are you talking about a visual? For me, light is a sensation, a tingliness that isn't visual.
Mm-hmm. Each of us are put together differently with our own kind of perceptual strengths. And so someone may see light, someone may feel light, someone may just know light. And it sounds like you're feeling.
Sensing.
Yeah, sensing, however, right. And that part of the shift for me, or the development for me, has been having all the senses kind of kick on in these layers, so that there's sight and understanding and feeling and sound. Sound is not as strong suit as the seeing and the feeling are for me. And the knowing, where someone else might be strong in the sound or strong in the sensing, or so. But whatever you have, however it shows up for you that you recognize as truth, then that's truth, right? So do you want me to share a little about animals, or is that?
Yeah, but although I'm feeling like I've taken up too much time, I don't know if people have questions.
Well, people share at different points. So, and I'm sure everyone has interest about animals, and I can just be brief. In that I experience animals as conscious the same way people are conscious, and they're also on their own evolutionary journey. And I'll see animals, when I look at an animal lifetime, past lives, I'll see different animals. And see that there's a pathway through that growth. And there's the same with humans, there's a different soul maturity. So this one cat that was trying to figure out the manifesting stuff, the other cat in the house was aware of the session. It's so funny. You know, like, what's that movie when Harry met Sally and someone at another table saying, "I want what she had"? So after the session, during that week, this other cat was seeing what had happened for the other cat in the house, and then requested a session. But that cat's maturity level, soul maturity level, wasn't as high as the other cat. But she recognized that there was something there that she wanted. And so then I worked with her as well, and it was just a whole different level. She didn't actually recognize the reincarnation piece. Her experience was that this was her life. And so what happened in that session for her was there was an opening and a connection to the higher aspects of her consciousness for her to have a kind of an eye-opening shift. But that didn't mean she suddenly opened to the skill level of her buddy. So
I've had the sense. I have a cat. I've had the sense that sometimes he's like waiting for me.
Oh, sure.
Well, and not just like, so he's in silence, and so it's a great help, because then if I'm in the silence, there's a resonance, and he's like, hey. but I also have a sense sometimes that the animals are waiting for people to move on so that they can.
I don't think we're holding them back. But there are animals I've met who are beyond my consciousness, and I can feel that and recognize that, and so it's like it's all just a game of awakening and self-realization.
So, 'cause they talk about like there being a large dog soul or each. So I didn't know that the animals moved. I didn't.
Yeah, I think it's like us in that there's one human soul.
Yeah.
There's one human blueprint, and then all these manifestations in uniqueness.
Yeah.
And so then, there's a dog template, but the animal souls can. I mean, that's what I've seen anyway.
Yeah. But
That's what I've
is
seen.
there a movement through that, or could you go to any animal? It's just fascinating. I mean,
Say it again?
well, is there a movement? You know, like you talk about, there's a divine. I can't think of the word. Like a dog could go to this, or could they move in any way?
I
saying a
haven't
dog.
looked enough.
I'm just intrigued.
Yeah,
now you're
no,
talking about it.
and I'm only sharing from my experience, and I haven't looked enough
Okay.
to. If I had been working with animals my whole life, I'd probably have more to say.
Okay.
So I only have just some experiences. I'm just aware that in the same way that there's a singular cedar tree consciousness of a particular species, and then it also then differentiates into a bunch of different trees, and then has its own expression and creativity and working with the environment, and so that you can, the same principle of oneness individuating keeps happening in all these different ways. So
No, I was just fascinated about an animal moving species. I'd never heard that.
Dogs have such different personalities as the dogs in the United States. Like, if you took a dog from the United States and took them to India, to the dogs that are on the streets in India, that dog would have a nervous breakdown, I think. I mean, they're just absolutely different. You know, in South America, it's just a whole, you know, I can pick up on that one, you know, that they're just so different.
right.
And another thing is, I had a neighbor whose daughter had leukemia, and I think she was like 6 years old, but she always had this cat that was always hanging around her, and she just lived right next door to me. And while this girl was going through chemo, that cat would always sleep next to her, and that cat lost its hair too. And the girl recovered, and so did the cat. The cat grew its hair back on again, and I just thought that was so great, you know.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really was something.
Yeah, there's a whole relationship that happens, you know, when I'm working with people, and in this donation thing that I kind of created to work with either individuals or groups of people through this donation format, I included in the family. There's a family offering where I'll work on all family members to help. It's like transforming the individual karma and the family collective karma, like all at once. And in that, I'm including the pets because of the relationship that happens, you know, and the exchange that happens and all of that. So yeah, it's a beautiful, rich thing. So I would love to just sit for a moment. I mean, we do have one more gathering tomorrow. But the time, there's a potency to this time right now, and I'd like to just acknowledge that and see if there's anything that anyone is grappling with. I mean, it may be that the intensity that's I don't know if that's the right word. If the amplification of what's here in the retreat is still just carrying you through the process that's happening on the inside, or if there's something that might be useful to help anyone in the midst of their inner process.
Well, when all the visitation from the light beings were here, I have just carried this light, and then I've been trying to surrender my identity, which has come up in many different forms, ultimately in the survivor. And then so I went back into the light, and I said, okay, what if I just go through the light, and however intense it is. And I said, but that's part of my identity too, light. So then I went into darkness. I dived into darkness. And I saw stars, and then I was willing to be a blob. But the blob was still reflecting light. And then I was willing to have a tractor tire go over and flatten me, but I still have that I am looking out.
So, what happens if you go backwards in through where the I am comes from?
I just keep tumbling, and there's light around.
So just keep tumbling.
Becomes like a falling star. That just...
This is something that you can play with too.
I
And
just become a spiraling, just... And my senses are all disoriented.
so this requires focus, and I can see as you do this I can see when the mind is focused, and in that surrendered place, the brain chemistry changes. And so I can see that. I can see when you're focused in that way, and the chemistry is changing, and then I can see when there's a more activity. And so I just want to.
But it's the mind that's supposed to focus?
That is an awesome question. I love that. It plays a role. It plays a role in the focus, and then the surrendering and the letting, the dropping back. So what I was just wanting to say was that there are, I don't know, it looked like 50 to 60% of the time of your sitting that things were lined up in the way that was pointing the direction that I was pointing to. So I would just encourage you practicing that. And maybe at a time when you're really fresh. And I'm not saying that you can't do it now. I'm just saying that it's something to play with, to be in meditation, meet that sense of I am that sees out and sees all this stuff. And let that be the yellow brick road back.
Yesterday, after the, both times after the light beings and after the upgrade, I just really felt, it was so amazing to feel in the light. I've gone straight back into my mental body, and it just feels really tight. And in the morning meditation, it's much easier for me, but by the afternoon, I feel I've tightened right up, and it's like every time I sit, I'm kind of willing, but it's not. I know it's not the right way to go. I just can't. I think it's like a mechanism. It's been like a protective mechanism. I don't know. It's just it's sort of not able to drop.
Sometimes it's just really useful to notice, and just being with that. The body can have its own ripeness, its own timing. And if we don't try to force it, it can just open. Sometimes it's useful to focus in more and then to meet it more specifically, of noticing the tightness and where is the tightness, and breathing spaciousness in through that. There's different ways of being with the unfolding that's happening.
Yeah, this morning I could do that, and that's what I was doing, because previously if everyone said, where do you feel that? And I'd feel like, what a stupid question. I could never feel anything in my body when somebody asked me that. It used to quite irritate me. But I understand, I've been beginning to understand how sort of, not trapped, but sort of up here I've been. It's a bit of a shock even to me to realise that. I was kind of unaware. Like Miles saying, you do so much, get so much knowledge, but until you actually get it and feel it, it's all in your head. So I started to think, I've not got it. Gonna go all the way back to England and I've not got it again.
I was just going to suggest dancing again.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, it's in the letting go and the surrendering in, when we drop into these deeper places, that's where everything arises out of. And so when we come back to that 0 point, we're dropping into an organizational force that's greater than anything that we can imagine. And so this is why meditating daily is so useful, because you bring yourself, it's like a reset. And so to not worry if suddenly one's in the mind and it's spinning, the pure fact that you noticed it is probably an improvement in a way. Oh, that's right. I think there's something else is available that feels better.
Yeah.
And so then it's just the sensation of busy mind then being the reminder, oh, wait a minute, go dance. Or drop into animalness and breathe through your skin, which is happening all the time anyway.
Yeah. It's like having glimpses and getting, and then it goes. So I guess it's just a practice that putting in the force, was it fierce willingness?
Yeah. And just as I was saying how my thing in the morning is to open to a particular frequency and double check. Are my feet in that? Are my feet going to hit the floor and land in that frequency? And if they're not, I don't put them on the floor.
Yeah.
I stay in bed and open to whatever adjustments need to occur until it feels right. So it's a practice. So it's a practice. Life is a practice.
Yeah. And I don't know why, but it's easier in the morning. It's like as the day goes on, it gets, I don't, I was about to say struggle, it's just easy and easier in the morning. But maybe that's just my time,
Yeah. Or maybe there's things you can do in your day that help support you having that freshness and clarity throughout the day. Then they can be simple things. I went into the room that I'm staying in the other day and was in there for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and suddenly felt exhausted and that I needed to sleep. But I didn't feel that way when I went in the room. And I recognized that, so I just listened. It's like, what's happening? Oh, there's no oxygen in here. It's like all the windows are shut, the door's shut. Oh. So in my tiredness, I opened the door, got a big breath of fresh air, and went for a walk, because I felt great. So there may be simple things. Drinking enough water, eating certain foods, not eating other foods, taking a little walk. So, and this is in that curiosity, right? And so then maybe you ask, it's that mystery of why am I not as fresh in the afternoon? Who knows what may come? And then you can come back to then life being the adventure. It's okay if you're in your head. It's okay, it's like it's a beautiful movements that happen. And that place where one speaks to oneself kindly can start to be part of the play.
Yeah, no, I do. I practice that. Yeah. I don't know. I just had a moment like, it's all gone. But where's the light gone? And I know it's a stupid thing to say, but I'm just going to say it out loud because I thought, hell, not hell, but it's just better to say it than sit here and think it.
Yeah. So where's the light gone? Well, the light's actually here. So in yourself, even if you can't see it or feel it, the memory, the knowledge of that, oh, wait a minute, it's right here. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I don't know if the mind's playing tricks. I was just sitting out with a tree, watching the tree, move, and felt like that was, but it's almost have to engage the mind to get back to the place of dropping, which I'm not sure whether if that's not the right way to go.
You can totally play with it that way.
Okay.
I'll sometimes do that myself if I've been doing a lot of work that's engaging my mind, and then I'm realizing, whew, okay, I'd like something different. There is that sensation of the mind of dropping in, or there'll be a conscious kind of movement of awareness shifting to more of a felt sense of embodiment. So all these, different exercises come from people's direct experiences. Mm-hmm. And so you can then play in yourself of what serves you most. So yeah, having that playing with that dropping is useful, makes sense. Makes
Thank
sense. You. Yeah, you're welcome.
In this tumbling back, my awareness was in my heart center.
Uh-huh.
But now I'm curious about the mind
Uh-huh.
as a tool
Uh-huh.
and not being in charge.
Uh-huh. So I'm going to go back to that, like my loving of that question, right? Because there's something really, really rich in there, which dropped me out so deep that then I forgot that you had said that. So my mind is really strong also, which is why I see the way that I see. But there are octaves of mind. And it seems to me in each of these levels, the mind surrenders to the heart. And there's a union and a beingness. And so this is part of each of these dimensional bodies, part of each of these octaves, that there's a mind aspect and a love aspect and a body embodiment aspect that all then also function as one. And what I love about your question is it starts to put me in touch with these different octaves of mind, yet that also have an integration in with heart. And so I feel the game at play on multiple dimensions at the same time in your question. And so is the mind doing it? Well, it's a part of it. But the thinking mind surrenders its interesting activities of thought to allow itself to become so single-pointed and focused and then for me there's a sense of direction. And so that navigational tool set within ourself where we know what's true, right? Like truth. Gosh, I don't know how to say these things. It's like truth is a straight line, like truth doesn't err. And inside ourselves, we know, like true north that doesn't err, we know home. We know that sense of truth on the inside. And so the mind, is the mind responsible? Not really. The whole system is what's engaging, because the will is also engaging to focus the mind. So the practice of the mind getting still, like what does that? Does the mind do that? No, it's like the larger whole mystery is at play with itself with these different components. And so the pathway, one of the pathways into that deeper truth is I am. That pure sense of I am that we all know. That we look outward into the world from and as. And that is a pointer, a traditional pointer of meeting that sense of I am to follow back where that comes from. So the mind in a certain way lets go. For these different aspects of consciousness to come into that focus and then you have to let go on that pathway back. And I don't know if you can see it. I mean, I can see it in you when you're focusing in that way. And you've been witnessing me do it throughout the whole week when I'm being quiet for a moment. And consciousness recedes back into itself. I mean, can you guys see that? It's like, can you see the brain functioning difference when I'm... there's because we're made the same way, that's also the value of coming together in this way, is then your physical body, the physiology of your body gets to see, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And for your body to attune to that also. And so there are moments when you were doing that exercise where I was seeing that the pituitary and pineal gland were lining up the chemicals. There was an engagement of you pointing, of going in the right direction for what I'm speaking about, for going backwards. So, and that's just why I was saying to practice. Mm-hmm. Because you've got it, and it's just sustaining it.
Right.
It's just sustaining that single-pointed surrender back.
We're surrendering inside ourselves.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Following that sense of I am. Surrendering backwards from where you're seeing from. You got it.
Okay.
I told you got it.
Keep talking.
Right. Well, no, I mean you can if you have more to say, but I'm just saying like the part that you're, you had it, and when you're saying in your heart surrendering back, it's great.
I was just remembering you say surrendering back to the place from which you can't see or something.
Right, well, you can't see it. When you're looking out, can you see where you're looking out from? Gotcha. Right, so that, right, where you're looking out. You can't see where you're looking out from. You're looking out.
Right, okay, okay.
So that's where you're bringing your focus of like, oh, wait a minute. And so because you're seeing from there, this is where I was talking about sometimes it can feel like going unconscious. Because in everything you're seeing, you're allowing that to collapse back into, sometimes it feels like a vacuum. I mean, there's different sensations that can happen, but it's not useful to start looking for any of those sensations. If you can just feel what I'm speaking about of that, the what is seeing out, to then go back through that.
Okay.
And it's not like you can't actually go back through it. You have to surrender. It's like surrendering, letting go. Back from where that comes from.
Words
Right.
are tricky.
Right. Right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think this week I've been trying to, do that into nothing in a lot of different ways. And I never completely lose a sense of myself. Completely. And today I stopped trying. I had a sense, I went through it, I felt like there was this just little piece of me that wasn't ready to completely. And I cajoled and surrendered through that and everything, and it kind of loose. At some point I felt, well, that's okay if you're not ready, I actually felt my sister come and give that little part of me pillows, and I was like, just chill, I had gone through this. I was like, now that's enough. We're going. We're surrendering. You get in the car. We're going. It didn't work. But anyway, I let go of it, and I do feel, so it's, what is much more accessible is this really deep stillness. And it's in that place that you're talking about. I wouldn't be able to say where it is. It's just, I can't, it's just so still, and it's really peaceful, and it doesn't, I don't want anything out. It's felt like there's too much activity in trying to surrender. It's like getting in the car or falling backwards or trying to imagine fainting, or I finally I'm like, enough already. And then I said, well, I actually can access these other dimensions anyway. I don't feel like I have to disappear completely to go to the soul or to the light body. So, but then I do have this, when I do that to go to another dimension, I still feel like there's a little part of me that isn't there either. Like a little part of me that's like, I know this place is real. I really do. And I can feel it. But I know I could feel it more fully and see it more clearly. And is that full surrender thing, is that connected to that? Or should I just I mean, I guess where I'm at right now is feeling like just let go of it and just hang out there more. The more I was in, I don't know what you call light body. It wasn't the soul, is that right? From, whatever this place is above. And I was like, oh, Kristin describes going around and feeling things and trying to figure out. I was like, oh no, just I'm just going to be here. And maybe for me, it's more about just being still in those other places. Not worrying about, like, just the stillness stops the questions. Oh, is this real? Or what is this? Or, oh, I wish I was feeling this more. Or, oh, this is cool. I think I'm feeling it more than I ever have. So that's good. You know, like all that just like quiets down. So that feels right. But this, yeah, no, never have like, it's like a never completely, maybe I have and I don't remember, but it isn't a complete, like I'm gone. Like I'm more in that quiet stillness but I have this vague sense that there's this very still, but there's form, there's Monica, there's still, yeah. So I don't know if you have any. Hi.
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 It's
I wonder if you have any
yeah,
wise counsel.
it just sounds right on. You know, like your sister showing up and giving you pillows. You know, for that place, it's like, oh, it's okay, honey, you can rest. You can rest. You're not the one doing it anyway. Right? That deeper, it's like that efforting place is like, sometimes that efforting is really useful.
Yeah, well,
And
that's what I was like, because...
And sometimes it's not.
I do feel that, like, oh, part of me's like, no, I really want to do this. And I'm like... No.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. And so that resting can be equally perfect. And this is where I keep wanting to point to that wisdom on the inside in each moment, that is going to be your guide. Anyone's guide, that truth in the inside that then can come forward and say, psst, rest. And if you're not quite getting it, so your sister showed up and she's like, yeah, rest, have some pillows. And that it doesn't mean that that your commitment is less.
Oh, that is true. So I do have this little, it feels like...
Come on.
yeah, so that piece that's left when you say, oh, your commitment, yeah, it's because it's like, this is really different. It's not about a trauma that needs to be gone through. It's not about a past life. It's really just like this little piece. It's like, you know, I don't like having a glass of wine with my husband and watching Netflix. I don't really know if I'm ready for a completely blowing my life apart. Like, honestly, it feels like this sort of, I don't want to say like lazy, but like, your life got blown apart. Like you moved to Kauai. Like you know, like you had to deal with your house. Like I know it's all perfection.
No,
you know?
but it's
like,
so much
but
better.
I know that intellectually, but there's this little comfort. It is this part of me that's not about a story. Like it just feels about pure comfort. And so there's a little like, wow, all right, okay, yeah, I'm gonna need my sister to give that pillows because I'm like, get in the car. What are you doing?
Huh.
Where we're going's better. I know that.
Right.
So it's interesting that I forget what part you said, but yeah, it's just it has a different flavor than some of the other things that I have felt keeping me.
The willingness to let go of the wine and Netflix doesn't mean that the wine and the Netflix actually have to go away. Like that was the whole fear for me in relation to partnership. Was that if I kept surrendering these desires and needs for partnership, would that mean I was setting myself up to not have a partnership? No, it's just the attachment to it. So, I mean, that's the thing that's crazy, is it's like what's most important when we start surrendering those things. That's when we start to see whatever we were getting from the outside is actually intrinsic. So here's another one. So in that whole thing of having to surrender, there was this, I was getting to these more and more fundamental aspects of our human nature. So things that weren't personal. I mean, it's not true. There was the personal aspect, but I could surrender back through and then see, oh, human beings, there's like an animal part. We like to snuggle. we like to connect. Some people don't. Some people are wired a little differently, and there's more of a solo thing and don't want to snuggle, and so it's not like across the board, but we can recognize that as kind of a part of our human construction. And that was what was coming up to surrender. And so there was terror of, if I surrender human connection, does that mean I'm just gonna live in Kauai by myself and write books and have someone else distribute them? And I'm just gonna hang out by myself because I've surrendered through human connection? So there was stress about it, let alone partnership. Well, that's off the path. So the interpretation in that approach. And so, and then in the willingness, because it kept knocking at the door. I wasn't trying to find the sense of connection that I had to surrender through. It kept showing up, knocking at the door. Honey, this one, surrender through this one, And so finally, when there was willingness, then I was experiencing it as human fabric, as our human nature, how we're created. It's like fuzzy little rabbits, like fuzzy rabbits. It's like their nature. It's their nature to be fuzzy and cute. That's just how they are. You can't separate that out from the rabbit. And so I was with that in our humanness. Oh, that sense of connection thing, you can't separate that out of the humanness. That's the human fabric. That's our blueprint. That's how we're made. But in the surrendering through it, all of humanity was then inside me. And I was in a larger capacity that was then free from the human snuggliness or desire for connection. So it had to be let go of to then open to this larger place where then humanity is within that. But it was only through that experience, it doesn't mean that I'm not still a human being. And that the natural humanness is functioning. There's a deeper freedom from it in a way, but then also allows a deeper enjoyment, because then the connection isn't happening connected with a sense of lack. So connection can be happening or connection cannot be happening.
On the level of personality.
Yeah. And what's happened is then the connections have actually gotten stronger. Because there's more freedom to love. And there's the recognition of the beauty of the humanness, and that we get to have that experience. It's sort of similar to when I was being called to start surrendering through instincts. It's that same kind of level of fundamental to the vehicle, fundamental to the functioning. So so it doesn't mean that you have to let go of wine and Netflix and your hubby. But the willingness, and maybe this life doesn't require that of you, that you have to be willing to let it go. My life requires me to be willing to let things go, because that's just what it keeps doing. So you don't ever have to, I mean, it's all good. You know, and the piece that the truth in you, whatever then is nagging, right? It could be that it's an idea. Oh, I'm supposed to surrender something to get to a particular level of spirituality. If that's the thought, well, maybe it's not true. And so then you get to be with what's the truth. Is it important to surrender through that or not? Like, is there willingness to, like, is that relevant? Is it not relevant? I mean, the truth is that we are this whole thing all the time anyway.
Yeah, I guess so. It's like I don't want to give up comfort. It's what it all is, like the pillows, the whatever. So I do have this idea. I have to give up comfort to go where I so crave to go. Like it's not like I'll do something else. No, it's like my life is about on so many levels that. So I like the thought that that's just an idea. That's all.
Yeah, and then you get to find out. And in all the surrendering, have you found yourself to be far more comfortable after you've surrendered through something?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yet the thought structure remains strong.
Uh-huh. Who knows? Maybe you'll have 2 glasses of wine. Maybe you'll surrender through
That's
like.
over the moon. Half a glass is fine.
Quick question. Isn't it really what you're surrendering is well, it's the attachment to whatever it is as part of you. That's all you're surrendering. You're not really surrendering it. It's just the attachment.
The attachment and the identification, yep.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
Yep, and then the truth of it then becomes intrinsic. So then it's on the inside, but in a different way than when you feel separate from it and you're wanting it or identified with it.
Right. And behavior does change. But it does not change in all the dramatic ways. It's the end of my relationship with my wife if I do this. I can't do this. It doesn't end like those are all the dramatic fears thrown up by the ego.
Well, but sometimes it's true.
Oh yes, I agree.
So that's where the willingness comes from,
Right.
Or that's where the willingness is necessary. But
Right.
but yeah, for some people they're in the same relationship throughout the whole thing, and for other people it needs to change. Or
I wasn't meaning that one in particular. I mean, I just because that's because I've been married a long time, but but it's whatever fear works for you is the one that you throw up as, oh, I can't do that, which is just an ego defense.
right, it's a defense exactly.
Yeah.
Well, comfort doesn't feel like an ego thing. It's just comfort. Or maybe I don't know. Fair enough.
No, but comfort, wanting comfort over pain, that's also natural. That's naturally human. But we can still be identified or attached to it. But the thing is that comfort is not different than anything else, where it may be at this point in your life, or as part of your life, comfort is what the universe is providing in the wine and an awesome husband. So when you let go of the attachment to it, you'll, even though you already appreciate it a lot, I'm aware of, you'll appreciate it more.
Maybe you'll say, gee, this isn't as interesting as I thought.
No, I know her, sweetie pie. They got a great thing going. So, yeah, so we can totally get attached to comfort. Yeah, you're welcome. And then I'll also say then when we don't have comfort, sometimes it's because that's what's needed for a particular thing. So there's the cycles of everything. And you've known discomfort. And so it makes sense to be attached to the comfort because it feels so much better than the other experience. But in the continual surrendering it, then, right, we get to be in the beauty.
In the past, I don't know, 7 years, I guess, I've just been churning through a lot of changes. I've let go of a lot of my life that I thought was giving it meaning. Some of it was and some of it wasn't, I guess. Anyway, I've created a lot of space in my life right now where I don't have, I used to have tons and tons of friends. I now have very few friends that I care to spend time with. Ditched the husband. The house and the big property all gone. So I've made all this space with the intention, or I don't know if it was a conscious intention, yes, to figure out what I really want in this life. And now I'm just kind of struggling in this space to fill it with something in a way, I guess. And no matter what I try, it feels wrong. I just feel wrong all the time. So the question is, maybe I shouldn't bother trying to figure out my identity, strengthen, Annie. because part of the reason I was letting all of this go was because it was, this history of control in my life. My family, my father, other people, my husband. And I'm like, okay, I need to finally figure out what I want for me and who I am. So maybe I should just not bother. I don't know if this makes sense.
I have a question for you. What feels right?
I can't tell. That's what I mean by it all feels wrong.
Well, that's information, though. One of the things my mother told me when I was young was that no's are just as important as the yeses. And one of the things I've learned in the awakening is that the not knowing is wise. And so where you have that feeling of every movement is a no, that's the universe informing you. And it's not a problem, there's nothing wrong. You're not making mistakes in that way of feeling like you're wrong. That there's and this is why I asked what feels right. Which might be doing nothing. And if that's what feels right, then resting in that and the quality of rightness in it. And it can be really confusing sometimes when we feel like we should be doing something or creating a life or making something happen. But the rightness, the action or non-action of rightness can sometimes make no sense to the mind at all. And that's where listening in the heart, what deeply resonates. And if you can't feel what resonates, what I do is then I just go deeper. If I can't feel what resonates in through however I'm feeling things, then I just get quiet. Like, okay, let me drop deeper. I can't see. I can't feel. I don't know. And sometimes we go through that in larger phases in our life, where it's not just about a particular issue or a moment in your day, but it's a larger kind of reset that's happening. Or it's a larger movement that has its own ripeness of time. So is there anything that you can name that feels right?
Painting. Walking the dog.
Mm-hmm.
meditation when I can get my mind to shut up. Yeah. I guess there are things that feel good if I can allow them. Without my mind telling me I'm wasting my time.
So I would keep going with those, right? When something feels right, and the more you're resting in the qualitative experience of rightness, then that will continue to grow. And then you'll recognize, oh, rightness is now stopping painting and eating some food. Oh, rightness is now check phone messages. Right, so the more that you rest with what is right, what you recognize and resonate with that, being with each moment, and perhaps letting go of the larger perspective, that will take care of itself. If you're meeting each moment in the rightness. It may be those larger things aren't known right now and they can't be answered right now. And as one tries to make that happen sooner than it's ready to, and the universe is like saying, oh, no, not that, not that, not that. And so then the system can start to get frustrated. You can start to feel like you're supposed to be doing something.
I definitely feel like I'm supposed to be doing something.
So if you rest in each moment and deeply listen, that moment will inform you. If you need to be looking at potential jobs in a newspaper, then what will inform you in the moment is go out and get a newspaper. And sometimes there's the feeling of, oh, I'm not doing the right thing that's authentic. And in those situations, when that happens for me, I always will stop, usually, will stop and get quiet. Recognizing, oh, wait a minute, what does want to happen? What's happening now isn't actually what's deeply wanting to happen, so let me just be quiet for a minute and allow myself to open to what actually wants to happen. And so then the sensations, what used to happen for me is I would, and sometimes I think this still happens, but not often, I would feel anxiety and have this anxiety that I was doing the wrong thing, and I would keep working on my website or keep working on something through this anxiety. And then at some point, there was a sitting with the anxiety and realizing, oh, that's actually consciousness trying to redirect itself. I need to stop working on the computer and go out and get exercise. And so as we continue to listen to these sensations on the inside, we can see more what they are. And so that feeling of you should be doing something else could be divine guidance. It could be the mind just producing something because it's not comfortable with what actually is. And so then that feeling doesn't have to be a problem. You can sit with it more, to actually let it reveal. And it may be different in different moments in time.
That's helpful, and it is not actually the question I was trying to ask, because that's what came out. It actually wasn't. But the question that I was trying to ask, I'm not sure I need to ask it anyway.
Okay.
I mean, you're not one of those teachers that teaches to annihilate the ego anyway. I mean, you don't even use the word ego, but, well, rarely. When someone else does, you use it, but yeah, I guess the question is, in trying to kind of create a new life, am I just creating more stuff that I have to surrender through anyway? Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm at a place where I don't have a whole lot going on. I could probably surrender through a few things, boom, boom, boom. And if I'm kind of building up a life, kind of building up attachments in a way, it's just more to surrender through.
Well, I think I get your question now. It's like, if you surrendered all that because you created something, are you just going to do the same thing and create something else that feels fabricated?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to say the same thing of the encouragement of the deep listening. Just keep listening. And it's not that you don't get to enjoy certain things, enjoy friendships, enjoy beautiful homes, enjoy gardens and dogs and painting and all that. That's what life is, one of the things life is about. But if life called you to let go of all this, life will then also bring forward what's next. And if one is trying to create the thing, it may be then you create from a, as you are using an ego place where the mind is engaging the will and creating a reality, which is a beautiful thing. But in the deeper surrendering, something else will come forward in its own timing. And it may even be a deeper realization that then comes forward and says, yeah, go create the life you want again. Go do that. But it's from a different level of awareness. Or maybe something else wants to get created, or something else comes to you. We don't know. That's part of how we set it up, is we get certain glimpses of foreshadowing and certain things we don't get to see. And so another thing that's helpful for me is the adventure, is embracing the adventure and the mystery. Was it Helen Keller said something about embracing life as a...
Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all.
Yes, I just want to say one more thing, because I recognize the frustration of wanting to create and feeling like it's the wrong thing. Like, both of these sides are just very familiar to me. Of the wanting to create and feeling it's not right, so you have to keep letting go. And then feeling like something wants to happen something different wants to happen, but not knowing what it is. I know both, for whatever reason, I know both of those really well. And yeah, the surrendering and the trust are useful. And I don't use the word ego a lot because people use it in so many different ways. And I don't always know what people are talking about. And so that's why I use the word sense of self. Because there's the sense of self can both be seen through, but also serves a function. I mean, there's lots of reasons I speak about the sense of self instead of the ego.
Well, I mean, I don't trust my mind to make decisions for me. But I can't always discern who's making the decisions, I guess, or where the decisions are coming from. Like, I don't have confidence in that. Stepping into it.
And it's a learning process, right? And for me, the continually going back into the heart, what resonates as truth in through the heart.
Yeah.
Whether it makes sense or not, when it has that ring of truth. Yeah. So this is a beautiful ending place. So, all right, have a beautiful rest of your evening.